Hello again, Greg here, and welcome to the third episode in my Learn Latin series. This one will be focusing on Latin verbs, particularly those that belong to a group known as the first conjugation. So for those of you who don't know, we'll begin just by talking about what a verb is. And verbs are action words, words of doing, and they include things like to live, to love, to die, to jump, to kick, to swim, to fly, to be, to do. These are all examples of verbs. And they're defined by 5 key characteristics which distinguish them. And these are person, number, tense, mood, and voice. So let's look at each one of these in turn. So first of all, person describes who is the subject of a sentence from the speaker's point of view. If the speaker himself is referring to himself, then it's the first person. As in, if we use the verb to love as an example, I love and we love. In the second person, he's speaking to someone. Either one person or a group, so you love, either plural or singular. And third person is speaking about a third party. He loves, she loves, it loves, they love, for example. The number tells us how many subjects there are. It can be singular or plural. For example, she kicks the ball as singular, they kick the ball as plural, but both of these are still in the third person. So let's look at tense, and tense tells us when the action has taken place. It might be in the present, it is happening, it happens, or in the future, it will happen. There are several past tenses, one being the imperfect, and that describes actions which happened in the past but are kind of ongoing, continuous. So the English equivalent is it was happening. The perfect past tense is it happened or it has happened. The future perfect describes something that was completed in the future. It will have happened. And the pluperfect describes something that had happened. So there are only 6 tenses, and those are them in front of you. We then need to look at the mood, and Latin has 3 moods. The indicative, which just describes a fact, he is sitting. The imperative, which is a command, sit down, for example. And the subjunctive. Now, we don't have subjunctive in English. It does exist in lots of other European languages, but it's quite difficult to describe in English. So we're not going to look at it in any great detail for now, but just to be superficially aware, it discusses hypothetical or potential circumstances. And lastly, all verbs have a voice, and it can either be active, as in he poured the water, or passive, the water was poured by him. In active, the subject is conducting the verb, whereas in the passive, the verb is, the subject is receiving the verb. A lot of scientific writing uses passive verbs, as in the results were calculated, statistical analyses were applied, the bunnies were cured, etc. Okay, so I mentioned this word conjugation, and a conjugation is simply a group of verbs which behave similarly, have similar characteristics. We don't have them in English, it's another new concept, but in Latin there are 4 conjugations, and we're going to look at the first one now. So here's a page right out of my Latin dictionary at home, and we're going to look at this verb here, the verb to love. And whenever you look up a verb in a Latin dictionary, you get 4 separate parts. These are known as principal parts. So in the case of to love, we have amo, amare, amavi, and amatum. It's not important to understand exactly what each of these mean at this stage, but it is important to look at the second one of these, the amare. This is known as the infinitive and translates as to love. If it was another verb, it could be to kick, to die, whatever, but it's the infinitive. And the infinitive determines which conjugation a Latin verb belongs to. So any verb which ends in are, in the second part, belongs to the first conjugation. And that's important because all verbs of the first conjugation behave in a similar way. Once we take that are off the end of the word, we're left with the stem, which is am. Technically the stem is ama, but I prefer to think of it as just am, and you can see why in future videos. And the stem is the thing that tells us what the verb is. So anything that starts am is the verb to love. All variations of that verb will start am. as you can see here. Whether it's he loves, she loves, he will be loved, they are loving, he had been loved, etc. Okay, so once we have the stem, in the case of the verb to love, the stem is am, then all we need to know is the endings to tell us exactly what's happening in the verb. So these are the endings for the present indicative active. Present meaning that it's happening now, indicative meaning that it describes a fact, and active meaning that the subject is actually conducting the verb. And these are the endings here. O, as, at, amus, atis, ant. And if we take our verb to love as an example, we take our stem, am, and stick it before each of these endings, and we make words. Amo means I love, amas means you love, amat means he loves, amamus, we love, amatis, you love, amant, they love. We can take another verb, for example. Let's take the verb to praise. Laudo, laudare, laudavi, laudatum, to praise. We take our second principal part, laudare. We know that it's first conjugation because it ends are, and we take the stem laud. If we take the stem and put it before each of these endings, then we get laudo, I praise, laudas, you praise, laudat, he praises, laudamus, we praise, laudatis, you praise, laudant, they praise. So let's try it with one more verb. And we'll use the verb to fly. Volo, volare, volavi, volatum, to fly. So the first person singular, volo, I fly. Second person singular, volas, you fly. Third person singular, volat, he flies. Volamus, we fly. Volatis, you fly. Volant, they fly. So you can use this pattern to take any dictionary verb, find whether it belongs to the first conjugation or not, and if it does, these endings can be used to make any present indicative active verb. And you should have possibly noticed by now that the first of the four principal parts is the first person singular present indicative active, which translates as I love, I praise, I fly, etc. So the first part is I do, the second part is to do, whatever verb it might be, and don't worry about the last two parts for just now. So, we'll just finish up by adding some Latin vocabulary to play around with. So we already have learned these three verbs here. We have supero, superare, superavi, superatum, which means to overcome, usually in a physical sense, but can also mean mentally or in other ways. Servo, servare, servavi, servatum, which means to protect or to save. Voco, vocare, vocavi, vocatum, is to call or to summon. Erro, errare, erravi, erratum, is to wander or to make a mistake, to err. This came up in our last episode with the phrase errare humanum est, to err is human. Habito, habitare, habitavi, habitatum, means to live or to reside. That's where we get the English word habitat from. Festino, festinare, festinavi, festinatum, means to hurry. And cogito, cogitare, cogitavi, cogitatum, means to think. So take some time just to write these down or try and commit them to memory. And then you can test yourself. So these are 5 questions. 10 questions. First of all, 5 Latin verbs to translate into English. And secondly, English phrases to translate into Latin. And with everything inside this episode, you should be able to do this. I'll post the answers in the description of the next video. Okay, and we'll just finish up with some phrases on etymology. So the phrase for today is cogito ergo sum, which was spoken or written by the famous French philosopher Descartes and translates as I think, therefore I am. And we've already come across this verb cogitare, to think, and cogito is to think. I think. The word for today is companion, which comes from the Latin word cum, meaning with, and panis, meaning bread, with bread. and it was literally someone with whom you would share your bread with, your companion. Okay, so that's everything for this time. Next time we'll be looking at the future tense and the imperfect tense of first conjugation verbs. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye for now.